promise that I ain't going nowhere. I ain't blowing no smoke. I mean, I've been sober, but you should have known it. I wasn't going.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Women in Between. We're so excited to have you back. Here at the Women in Between, we love to discuss impactful stories to learn how we can thrive in single motherhood. So the goal of this session is to learn tips from these stories as we continue to work towards the woman that we want to become in this journey. And I am really excited to introduce our guest today, which is my cousin, Shayna. So, Shayna, tell us a little bit about yourself. Let everybody learn some things about you.
Okay, well, my name is LaShanna Sorrell. Everyone calls me Shayna. I am from Mississippi, born and raised. I currently live in Alabama. I have a beautiful 17-year-old daughter, and right now we are navigating senior year. So I have a whole new set of challenges to talk about. And I currently do marketing for a living. And I guess that's all. What else do you want to know about me?
So, I know that Grace is also busy right now with a
Yes.
lot of activities. So, what is she involved in right now, and what do you have going on right now?
Okay, so one, we just finished our first pageant. I literally had to push her because she's really introverted, unlike her mom, and just really push her out there. And she did well, and so she finished that. We just auditioned or tried out again for the color guard team on her for our high school band. So we made that and getting ready for that piece. Um, College tour, so we've started. We've made a list of schools. We just took the ACT and got our scores back. Really, really good. And so now we're doing all of her things. Now she's planning prom and all the other fun stuff and not really thinking about like school and classes and passing. So, and then for me, um, I do a lot of things. So one, I'm full-time marketing. I work for a corporation located headquartered in Birmingham. However, I have I love marketing and public relations. So I teach. I'm an adjunct instructor at a local university. I also dabble into event planning. So I have an event planning business. So I do right now pop-up events and creations. I like to do create experiences. I love food and all the things that go around it. And so I do a lot of events centered around food, engagement, conversations, really cool, fun things. So we're both equally busy.
You were both equally busy. You're always busy. I was really surprised when you told me that you were teaching, when you said you were grading papers. And I was like, how much more can you put on your plate? And you make it look so easy, even though I know it's not easy.
It is not. I don't sleep well, so this is great to fill in that time. So I was gonna say instead of binging a lot of shows, but I do binge a little bit sometimes.
Mhm.
It's a great way to fill in that gap in time for me. So it's just cool.
Well, while we're talking about balancing, let's go into our first topic, which is the balancing act. I think one of the things that I've always really admired about you is how well you're able to balance motherhood, but also balance your passions, right? And consistently challenging yourself, educating yourself, and now showing your daughter the same thing, that you can be multifaceted and do it all, even though you might have a different family system. So I want to know the secret sauce.
Well, one, it may look like I have it together, but I can tell you right now, it took me a while, right? So you got to think 17 years in this thing. So I feel like I'm at a good place. But if we go back to in the beginning, it
Mm.
was total chaos. And so that's one of the things I definitely know and understand. As a single parent, I had an unplanned pregnancy. I was not married. So for me, things looked a little different with during the childbirthing time and in the beginning stages. And, every time she would cry or holler and all these different things. So understanding how to do all of that and take care of her at the same time, because I'm in marketing and public relations, usually it's very people centric. So always having to be on, always having to make sure that I had it together. My hair had to be together. I had to have makeup because I was doing TV interviews. in the beginning of my career. And so I needed to make sure everything was okay. So there were several times in the beginning, I know the first few months, like I was miserable. Like I would come home just crying because I was like, I don't know how to do all these things. What happened is that I have a great support team. And so for one, her father has always been in her life, even though we made a decision not to continue our relationship. He was always there. And so we had custody set up where he was able to have her for some time. So that was a one great help to help with balancing, is to when he had her for those weekends. And in the beginning, when she was really small, because of his schedule, he was able to get her like midday, like midweek. And so it was really great for her to be able to have that time so I could get things done, so I could focus, so I could clean. I lived in the same city as my parents, and they were very, very, very helpful. My mother was awesome. My dad, I mean, would drop her off for a few hours so I could get work done. I had the bright idea that I was going to continue my graduate degree at the same time. So I was working on a master's and working full time, which was on call 24/7, in addition to having a newborn and being a new mother. So my parents were awesome. And then I had those extended family members. They were friends, right? Some of my core friends from college, they were able to help me in really figuring out the work-life piece. So that's probably like the biggest thing in the beginning. And then I just figured it out. And it's not going to be easy, and it's going to depend on your schedule. For me, I have a high motor, is what someone said. So I can get a lot of stuff done.
Okay,
and,
that's an
and
interesting.
stay, yeah, I don't know, like yeah, a high motor is what they said. And really, to me, what that means is I will push through and I will stay up. I will get things done. I would be maybe drop her off at her dance class, and then I would go grocery shopping. Or she had something after school, a parent teacher, whatever she would have going on. If it was something that I didn't have to be there for, I would fill in that gap with, oh, I could read at this time, or I could go and do this. And I would just try to figure those pieces out.
Yeah, maybe I'm high motor too.
I was gonna say yes. I see you doing a lot of stuff, and I think so many times. I was talking to another friend, and she was like, "How do you do all that? I just feel like I'm a single mother and I can't get half of this stuff done." And I said, "And you may not, and that's okay. Like we're all different. You know your bandwidth." And for me, it was like I had that support that allowed me to do that. If you don't have that support that where you can feel like you do that, then it's harder. The other thing is that Grace went with me. So when she was about 8 to 7 to 10, if I had work events at night, she would be with me. So people were able to get to know her. She would be in my office while I would go and do my events. And I made it work. Like I made sure that my employers knew and understood. And thankfully, I had some great employers who understood that and really was like, hey, we're going to make sure this is great. Maybe it was a manager who said, I'll watch her while you go and do this. And so I think one, opening up your mouth and saying you need help, which is very hard.
Hard. It is incredibly hard because first you have to be able to say what you need.
Yes, and sometimes you don't know.
You don't.
You don't know until that moment hits you, and you're like, okay, right now I just need someone. And I had a moment like that happened. I moved to Alabama by myself in Tuscaloosa, and I will never forget. It was a new babysitter, and we had it's a whole nother conversation about interviewing babysitters. So I had Grace interview this babysitter. We liked her. Everything was fine for the first 2 weeks. Well, I'm in the middle of this big executive meeting with all these people from corporate, and I get a phone call or a missed call or something from the school, and it's her teacher leaving me a voicemail saying that Grace said she was afraid to go home with the babysitter. And so I had no idea what was going on. And so I called the teacher of the school. She was like, she looks very scared. She's fearful. This is the first time I heard this. Like, Grace has not mentioned this. And so I'm like, I have no family here. I had only been living there probably for maybe 6 months, if that. So I just started going to church and a couple of church people. I had one acquaintance, one friend that lived there. So I started like calling. I'm like, I don't even know who to call to try to figure out somebody who could pick her up. So until I could just figure it out, because I didn't have time, I couldn't leave where I was. And in my head, I started thinking about like, oh my gosh, somebody's gonna call CPS on me. Like it's gonna be horrible. And I started spiraling and just crazy. Anyways,
No.
it was craziness for that 2 minute time period because everybody I called was unavailable. And then one of my friends, he was like, we went to college together and he lived there. He was like, okay, he worked remote. He was like, I got you. And so he went and picked up Grace, told the babysitter what to do, whatever, like, hey, I got her. And so, and he stayed with her until I got off work and I was able to get like figure out the situation. So I say that like we're talking about work and it happens, right? In the middle of working, doing your thing, sometimes you have to stop and say, okay, what is most important? And so, or figure out a solution. Now, I could have left that, I could have just ran out the door and just left, and it probably would have been okay and everybody would have been fine. Yeah. However, I am very career oriented and goal oriented. And so I felt like I wanted to be able to, I think that I should be able to have both. So I didn't want to leave, but I wanted to make sure that she felt safe and secure. So I was able to think, come up with a solution, and I had to be okay with that and say that it was okay that she was safe until I could get to her. And then once I was able to get to her, we were able to discuss it. And really what it was is that she was not raised to be yelled at. And this lady yelled at her and used profanity, and we didn't use profanity. And so it created this
Yeah, it was
fear.
uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable. Yeah. So what she was trying to express was she was uncomfortable. And at 7 and 8, she could not communicate that. So yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. And I think you said a lot there about, being solution oriented, and I definitely feel that in my day to day, right? You never know what direction you might have to pivot, especially if you don't have that support system set up. And you're right, it does look different for everyone, especially when you weave in like co parenting, right? Everyone's co parent looks very different and their involvement looks very different. Having family close to you, that's very important. I think you and I are in some similar situations where we are fortunate to have family close by, their fathers close by to help fill in those gaps. But I always think about women who don't have that and don't have those breaks in time to just gather, right? Like, okay, this is what I need to plan on. You don't have that mental break. And that's where I feel like it's so vital to be as organized as possible, right? Like, if you can plan it, if you can control it, do your best, right? And that's where it comes in, like having that high motor driver is like, there's going to be nights where you might have to stay up later than normal. It's just a tough decision that you have to make, especially when you don't have the support there.
Yeah, and I think also it's learning how to be vulnerable and create friendships.
Please don't say vulnerable.
That's like the buzzword. I was gonna say it's the buzzword of 2024. And so it's because as adults, it's hard to make friends. And if you're in a new place, you're moving, whatever. I know for me, when I was in Tuscaloosa, I was like, it was so hard for me to make those friends. And you know what? I tried to make a friend everywhere I went. So like if we were doing dance, I tried to find a dance mom that I could bond with, because then that's my solution. I can't get there to dance thing. Can you help me out? My neighbor ended up she lived in the same complex as me, and she had 2 kids, single parent, working full time at night, and she was going to school to try to get her bachelor's degree. And so she was doing a lot, and we became friends and our kids became friends. So then I became the house, like, hey, they can come over and they can do their homework, or I make sure that they can get to work, get to school because you're not home yet from work, and then vice versa. Oh, I have a thing at work, so can you watch her? And it was great because we were in the same apartment complex and they could just walk to our houses and be okay. And so I know we're protective as mothers, but also taking advantage of new people and new relationships, and creating those things. Like that's how when we start talking about vacationing and fun stuff and how we plan, like I began planning trips with other single parents so we could do family trips so it wasn't so isolating.
Yeah.
And so it's like, because how, like, I went on a trip and took Grace and I was probably miserable 90% of the time. She wouldn't know that because it was like just she and I. And I was like, oh, who's going to take the picture? How are we going to, like, oh, you got to use the bathroom. Well, somebody got to get out of line. Like it was all these small things that seem like you don't think about it until you're in that moment. And so when I met my friend and our daughters were the same age and they played together, it was really great. And she was at the same space. And so we were like, well, let's travel. So we were able to go spring break trips. Let's go to Gatlinburg and let's do these things. So now it's, even though it wasn't a 2-parent home, it made it seem like that, where we were able to support each other.
Man, I love that. That is definitely an area that I'm still working on. It's like the vulnerability piece of one, knowing what you need, being able to vocalize what you need, and then pulling on the right people in your community, right? Because I feel like being a single parent can be a pretty isolating experience because you're really in this in between, right? Like at one point, like yeah, you are in mom mode, but then the other point, you're in a different dynamic. So
Mhm.
it's like you're balancing this duality in an isolated space, and finding community that can support your family dynamic can be difficult. And,
Yes.
I think for myself and the kids, really leaning into the natural relationships that they create, they're pretty outgoing. I mean, we
Yeah.
can go to the grocery store and they know somebody in there. So, and pulling from that and getting to know parents, right? But even still in those dynamics, I would say 70% of the time, those parents are in dual family homes,
Yep.
right? So it's almost like you're not necessarily cherry picking, but finding a needle in the haystack of where can I find someone that is in a similar life stage and lifestyle as me, right?
Mhm.
That is
Yep.
going to not only benefit me, but my kids. And I've had to really be fluid with that idea of
Mhm.
what that looks like, right? Like I have friends that are single, never have been married, but they are loved by my children, and I can count on them to intervene and pick up if I need to, and really like consistently changing what the village looks like.
I agree. And
You know what I
it's going to be different at every season of their life.
Yeah.
So what I was doing for her when she was like going to daycare was different than early elementary. And now in high school, it's totally different of what we do. But you're right. Like sometimes it was very hard in the beginning to find those relationships. It's like, okay, well, they're married. So their husband really does, they like, it was different. Like they
Yeah.
couldn't hang with me when I wanted to have girls' night because it was a different dynamic, or they felt like you could see pity in their eyes. And
Oh, I
it's
thought it was just me. When I tell you I can't stand it, I genuinely can't. I thought it was just me. Now I'm probably being more transparent than I need to, but you can tell. You can
Mhm.
you can notice it. For the audience, I am going to call this out. We can tell.
Yes,
We can.
yes. And I think that people don't mean anything by it, but it's just like I remember like when I moved to Tuscaloosa, and so that at that point, Grace, with her father, we lived further away. So he was like an hour and a half away. So she would go for the summer. And so she would be going the entire summer, or she would be going like maybe we alternated holidays or whatever. So it might have been Christmas. So, anyways, I'm there in the city by my, attending church, doing whatever by myself. And I would run into people, and probably church is probably the worst place, but they were,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And so they were like, oh my gosh, where's your, where is Grace? I'm like, oh, she's with her dad. And I just can't imagine being away from my daughter for that long. How do you do it? What are you going to do with yourself? I would just be so distraught if I ever had to leave my child longer than the day. Like, and I know it was not intentional. And this was several people.
Yeah.
And I had to realize that because at the first time, I'm like, really? You don't think I know this? Like, you don't think that's hard? Like, and then I was like, calm down, bring it back in. And I had to see where it was coming from, because my anger, where I was ready to like say something smart, was coming from a different place. And we'll probably talk about that later, but it was coming from a different place. So once I stopped and said, okay, what is she really saying? And she's really trying to find a way to bond with me. She's really trying to comfort me. But I was just like, stop. Like, how about you just say, what are you doing while your child is away? Are you getting some rest? Like, so it was just so funny. And then this older lady came to me, and she walked up to me, and she knew my daughter was gone. And she says, she's like, what are you doing for you?
I
And I
love
was like,
that.
yeah. And I was like, well, I don't know. She's like, listen. And what I did not know, because I saw the end of her journey. So I did not know her in the beginning. And so what she said to me is, I was a single mother at one point in my life. And what I'm going to tell you is that you need to take these opportunities and do things for you. And when she said that to me, I was like, what? Like, it was like my mind was blown, because I'm looking at this woman who is so well polished, a leader in the church. Her husband is the elder, like all this perfect little family. And really, that was my first time talking to her besides, hey, how you doing, casually, right? In church, like, you know how you do the church, hey, and walk. And so when she came to me and said that to me, it made me like almost like start crying, like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone in this thing. I don't feel judged. I don't feel like, she understands. Later on over the years, we were able to create a great relationship. And she was more of like a mentor and encourager to me, versus this other person or people who were like, I just don't know. Just so for the audience, just say, hey, I hope you're having fun. Or say something like, I wish my kids are gone so I can enjoy some time like you.
Thank
Like, it
you.
doesn't have to be said. Like, I know my child is gone and I'm missing Christmas with them. I don't need that reminder of those things.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I feel that right there could be a topic in itself. I'm happy that you've acknowledged it, because I remember experiencing that myself in like that first year. And, you know, I really had to burn down some bridges and friendships, because you can't have that around you all the time, right? Like, because then you're in that state of guilt when, in a lot of ways, still being a single parent, there are still benefits. There are still some beautiful benefits in being able to have that break, right?
mhm.
That, no offense, actually, I am going to say this, some married women don't get,
No, even with a spouse in the
even
house.
with a spouse.
And so I have that conversation often with people. Like, I rather, and my saying is, I rather be single and satisfied than miserable and married. But
Mhm.
but I know that, and for whatever reason, there are so many relationships where the woman never gets to sleep or the
Ooh.
rest and a break. And it's like, because not only are they the mother, they're also the wife. And so being a wife is a full-time job as well. And
Mhm.
so being a wife and a full-time mother, that's a lot, and trying to juggle between those two. So yes, I agree. Sometimes there's some benefits where I've had friends and they're like, oh, I'm ready. I'm like, I'm going out this weekend, or I'm going to do this. They're like, oh, I'm so jealous of you right now. I said, you should be,
Yeah.
like,
Yes,
like, but
I
the,
love
yeah.
it. I love it. I love it. I say, the best part about this, and that is, now legally I am required to get a break, and I enjoy every bit of it. And I think, right, like you were saying, it gives you a moment to pause and have self-care
Mhm.
and to tend to you. And I think more people should encourage that. Just one in general for parents, especially single parents. If you're not seeing them with their children, they've acknowledged that, right? We've acknowledged the fact that there's going to be times where we are simply not with our children, right?
Mhm.
So we don't need that to be affirmed. It is
Correct.
physically present in our lives on a frequent basis. But I think encouraging balance, encouraging rest. My relationships now encourage rest.
Mhm.
A lot of my friends, family, if they know, okay, you don't have the kids this weekend, what are you doing? What are you doing for you? Are you going to get some sleep? You should probably catch up on sleep, and that breathes life into me. And I think it's vital when it comes to just the self-care piece, because we need it. Or I just need the 8 hours. I need the eight
Oh,
hours.
yeah. And sometimes it's doing nothing. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the one thing. It's not about, oh, let me get this task list done. It's about, no, you know what? I'm going to sit on this couch. I'm not good. I know that pile of clothes should be washed. I know there's a pile on the bed that's sitting on the other side that needs to be folded. I know I probably should clean up this tub, but you know what? I'm going to sit down for 2 hours. I'm going to turn on this streaming show and I'm going to watch this show, or I'm going to read this book that I've been dying to read for
Yes.
an hour and do nothing. Or my favorite thing to do, and this is probably TMI for the audience, I like to walk around naked. I want to be able, my child is gone, I can be free. And that is what I want to do. So
it's your space. Okay.
yes, that's it.
That's the best part about when it's just you and your space. Look, I put my little body oils on after a long bath, wrap my silk robe around, play music, dance, everything. I have long conversations just to appreciate the moment and the time to take a break and focus on me, especially because I was one of those wives that didn't get sleep, that didn't get rest. So this season for me is giving me more rest than I've previously had. So I'm also in a place of just relishing all of the breaks that I get. So no, I feel like we could talk about balancing and everything else that spirals from that, because we're both, we love to be all over the place and engaging with people.
Yes.
I could talk about it all day. But I feel like one of the things that comes with balance, especially when you say like you finally got into your groove, right? When you started to understand how to really utilize your community, helping out. I don't know. I feel like there is this sense of like empowerment that you can get, and you start to really look back on it, right? Especially, being 17 years in, you can look back on it and be like, wow.
Yeah. I promise you, I was talking. I was sorry. Go ahead, Jaleesa.
No. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I remember I was having a conversation with my best friend the other week, and we were talking about, just I was just talking about like, oh, I'm so excited about my daughter graduating, and she was just like, where did you like? We just went back retrospective, like where we came from, and she said, I remember the days when you were so like, I had pride. It was like it was shame and pride together. And I remember when I didn't want to let it go, like, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Grace is gone. And people would like, hey, you want to do something? I was like, no, it's not my weekend, so I can't do it. Like I said no to everything. And so my friends were like, you can do this stuff. I was like, no, I had this child and she's my responsibility and it's no one else's child. Because in my head, I felt this shame, right? Especially having an unplanned pregnancy. I was 22. And so, but then I was also proud. I didn't want to let people know, well, I do need a break and I did need that help. So that was the beginning. So I think I said that to say that sometimes as mothers and women, we've got to check that. And it's hard, but now looking back, I'm like, I was silly. I missed that awesome trip to the Dominican Republic because I didn't want to ask. Like this one in a lifetime opportunity because I didn't want to ask somebody to watch my child for 3 days because I felt that was a burden. And so understanding, like now, true enough, I don't need to be doing that every weekend, and I'm neglecting my child. But if it's once every 6 months and I'm taking a 3-day trip, then what happens, right? Now at this point in my life, I'm working. I do a lot of out of town travel. So my parents actually moved to Alabama 4 years ago. And so they're great because now they can drive over and stay in the house. Now my daughter thinks she's old enough to stay by herself, but I understand, I know what they're doing. So no, we don't do that. So so my parents come to the house and so it's been great. So definitely I just wanted to say that piece to make sure that we are acknowledging those pieces, and it's okay to acknowledge that, hey, I'm a little prideful, I don't want to open up to you right now, or we're super overly protective. For me, it was just pride and shame.
Look, pride, ego, and shame will have you, making your life harder than what it really needs to be. I had to have a friend tell me that maybe 2 or 3 years ago, because I was struggling with the balance of it and really being able to utilize my village. I don't think I could vocalize what I really needed because I was still adapting to just change. And I remember him saying, he's like, Lisa, you need to make life work for you. And
Mhm.
it was such a simple statement, but it was almost like I needed someone to give me permission to say, like, okay, no, I can do these certain things for myself, or I don't need to make life as difficult, right?
Yes,
That text message, they want to help. They
they
want to
do.
help, right? And looking at it from that standpoint, and I think, it's still a learning thing for me right now. One, just like we said, right, vulnerability, and even the shame part, right? Of, well, I'm the one that's in this position, right? Like, these are my kids, and
Yep.
I guess I'm just gonna have to make hard sacrifices. That was something I struggled with last quarter, where I was like,
Mhm.
how am I going to be able to accomplish the things that I feel driven to do, that is a part of the purpose that God has given me with my home situation? And then kind of coming to terms, like, Lisa, you need to stop looking at this as a negative, and like,
Mhm.
you're incapable. You are fully capable of doing this, despite what anyone has to say about it or think about it. And so start making tough decisions for me, right? To ask for
Mhm.
help, to lean on other people, and to even share that vulnerability of, like, I really do need a break. And this is really overwhelming for me.
Yes, I agree completely.
So I mean, I'm trying. I had a girlfriend tell me last weekend. She's like, honestly, on the outside, it seems like you just have it together. And
Mhm.
she's like, and you have to be able to lean into the vulnerability, right? Taking down the badge of honor, saying I'm resilient, and starting to say I'm vulnerable. Because
Yes.
a lot of us expect, and I will say a lot of Black women specifically hold this trophy of being resilient. And it's
Mhm.
like, why are we resilient? Is it
Yeah.
because we're forced into it and we had no other choice?
Yep.
Right. And so I don't know. I feel like being a single parent, yes, it does show resilient, because we have to be, right.
Mhm.
We have to be solution oriented. We have to be able to know how to utilize our resources. But I think vulnerability is where we really start to see the support that we need to show up and
Mhm.
actually reap the benefits of what community actually is. And then our kids get to reap the benefits of it too.
I agree with that completely because if they have the opportunity to meet like with your extended friends and family, you're teaching them how to communicate with other adults. And I had this great friend who was unmarried, no children. She was actually a child psychologist, but
Mhm.
she would come and do things like day dates with Grace. And she would say, okay, we're going to the movies. And she would go take her to see some animated movie so I could get sleep or go on a date or something like that. And or they would go, oh, we're gonna go do this. And she would go and they would have time by themselves, and she would be like the friend and like the cool auntie, or if we would go out to restaurants, it was really funny because we went out to a restaurant, I think it was like Red Lobster or something crazy. And Grace was maybe 10. And she wanted to have, it was like on the kids need to get these crab claws. At that point, I was not making a lot of money. I'm over here robbing Peter to pay Paul. I'm thinking about like I don't have any internet at my house, and I'm not about to order these crab claws for this child when she could eat this little shrimp basket for $4. And so and so my friend is like, she's like, I want the crab claws. I was like, no, you're not gonna eat those crab claws. So we're gonna get something that I know you would eat. And so I'm placing the order and telling her no. Well, my friend that's the single cool line, how dare you tell her no? I will take care of it. And I was like, no, like I was so upset with her. And so she was like, I'll take care of it. Don't worry. Whatever you want, get it. And that was her personality. And so she fit that role to do those things with her that I just could not afford. I could not afford. I probably couldn't even afford to be at the Red Lobster at that moment. And so I was like, I cannot afford this. And she did it. And afterwards, I remember like, I don't want you doing this because I can't afford this. And she stopped and was like, that's not your job. That was what I wanted to do. And and so I had to stop. She was like, I understand why you said what you said, but let me do what I need to do to pour into her. And if that's what I choose to do, because I was like, you're going to make her spoiled and entitled. And she was like, for some crab claws? Like she had to like bring me back down. Like she probably would have slapped me if we were face to face. Like, you're being extremely extra right now. I need you to bring it back down that it's a crab claw. Like she wanted it. I could afford to provide it for her.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. It's a special treat. It's okay to do those things. And so it was definitely, I had to be like, okay, all right, so.
Just let them buy the crab claws. It's almost like you have to let people serve in.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? In the areas that they are most passionate. Because, I have, some friends where they love to online shop and they're so quick with it, right? I'm indecisive. I will be looking for one outfit for 2 weeks.
I have a basket right now.
Yeah. I have an outfit I need to pick out for this weekend that I still haven't even been able to make a decision on. So, but for my friends that love to do that, I have no problem saying like, hey, can you look for some clothes for the kids this season? And I can, at least give you my card, whatnot, and you can do that. Because I know it's going to take me forever. Or, can you pick up these items? Because I know you love to go to Walmart every day. So while you're there, can you pick this up? Hey, you're at the barbershop every Saturday. Can you pick up, and just kind of pulling from, I already know that this is what you enjoy doing. So let's align you there because I had to realize not everybody wants to babysit overnight, and that's valid. That is so valid. I barely want to babysit every night. So it does work out. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there is power in community. That was one of the reasons the kids and I got very connected in our church because that's where we started to see most of our community. And I always love hearing about the community you've built with the women and the friendships that you have that have supported you. So now that we're wrapping up, what is one piece of advice to the woman who is just now starting on her single motherhood journey that you wish somebody would have told you? That's a hard one, isn't it?
It is a hard one. Like,
there's so many gems.
There's so many things I would say. I have two things to say. One, stop blaming yourself. I sort of, we talked about that shame and that pride, but sometimes we blame ourselves, right? For everything. Like it could be anything like, oh my gosh, because everybody else has that two parents showing up for this event. And I'm the only one. And we blame ourselves for that. Well, if I would have made this, like we create these stories and we blame ourselves so much. And it's so much pressure and that wears on us. And even though we think that we have it together, we don't. And we mentally don't have it together. And it wears on our on that side. We also feel like, we blame ourselves. Like I know for me, it was like, dating. That's a whole nother thing. Blaming myself, like, just making excuses and don't like you're in this situation. Okay, we realize it, accept it.
Yep.
And it's not about the situation. Oh, you're a single parent. You are a parent. And you're going to be an amazing parent. You're going to do what you need to do to provide for your child. And if that means that sometimes you have to play the father, if the father is not involved, then you step into those shoes or you find a mentor that could be a father figure for that child. You're going to make it happen because you're a mother. And that's what we do as mothers. And so I think if we stop blaming ourselves for the circumstance, and then just move forward to where we want the journey to go and pour into that. So, that may mean that your child is going to do things differently. Most kids from single parent homes mature a lot faster They're a lot more responsible. I can tell you my 17-year-old is extremely responsible. Like, we started learning how to separate clothes and wash clothes at 6 and 7. We understood what colors meant, so she could wash her own clothes. You know, we understood how to load a dishwasher. We had to do those things. Now she's like, hold up, you need to put your shoes up so the house won't get messy. I just cleaned up. Like, very responsible in seeing those things. So it's okay. Don't blame yourself for that. And then don't, even when things happen with your children, don't blame it on the singleness. And I went through that piece of, oh, because they're whatever they're going through, fill in the blank, it's because I'm a single parent. Just stop. It has nothing to do with because you're a single parent. It has something to do with the child development and what happens at those periods in your unique child. So don't do that. Okay. And then my second point, and I know it's a little lengthy, but you know I can talk. My second point is to make sure that you have healthy boundaries with the other parent. Ooh. And I think that so many times that, you know, however the relationship ended with the other parent, you never say anything negative in front of your kids, because that's their parent still. And in their eyes, that's still their hero. That's still the person that they wanted to be. Don't take that away from them. Mm-hmm. Like, whatever the issue and the hurt and the pain that happened, if that happened, whether if you inflicted it, they inflicted on you, whatever the case may be, handle that separately, privately. Talk to your girlfriends, talk to a therapist, whatever. But don't do it in front of the kids. Kids will pick up on things without you ever having to say a word. And I learned that a long time ago. You never have to speak anything negative. They'll pick it up and they'll tell you. So make sure you have those healthy boundaries there. And also understand and have a mutual respect. Like, my daughter, father, and I, once we realized that our relationship was over, we had those hard conversations to talk about dating other people, marrying other people. What does that look like for us as a family? How are we going to make decisions about school and careers and what we're doing? And so we figured out a system that worked for us. And so it wasn't back and forth, we're on again, off again. No, we made a decision and we created these boundaries for us. And that way our child can thrive at her best. And it has worked for us. Now we're at the point where we can laugh and joke. I even went to his wedding and, you know, as a wedding guest, and was so excited for him to celebrate. I will be at his he's in culinary school. So I will be going to his graduation to celebrate this moment in his life. And so understanding the boundaries in those relationships and not bringing that negativity with the kids. I see so much of the personal when we're talking about, we start taking away kids' privileges to see their parents. Why they're not doing this? Well, your daddy won't send me this money, so that's why you can't have this. Like, we do these things. I see it on social media. We make these posts. We degrade each other. Stop it. The kids hear it. If you need, get a journal and write it down and whatever to let that go, but deal with those issues separately. So that's my thing.
Oh, I love all of that. I needed to hear that too. So I appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming on here and taking the time to have a conversation with me. I'm always admiring you and hoping that I grow into you, because you just have so many gems that you share. And just being the multifaceted person that you are, it's hard not to look up to you. So thank you so much, Shayna. I appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and close this out. Thank you, everybody, for joining in, and we'll see you next week.
Because I don't want